Welcome, welcome. Jamie Hernandez here, founder of Breakthrough Yoga Coaching Method, helping you bridge the gap between your spiritual practice and your business so that you can heal, you can grow, and you can make more money. So today is called The Subtle Layers of the Ego that, well, I didn't put this in the title, but that F with your big dreams, your big visions. And here's the thing about the ego. Anytime you're moving towards what you want, the ego is always going to protect your current status. The other thing we want to start to think about is that we have our ego, or what I call survival, and our soul's voice, survival needs and our soul's voice. The ego will always protect your current day status and your past status, and the soul is always going to move you towards an unknown. And that's why the ego sometimes feels threatened by that, because it is something that has not been experienced in the nervous system. It has not been experienced in the mental patterning. It has not been experienced on an energetic frequency level. So I was on a coaching call with one of my clients and her ancestors. And so here's the thing. We, in our program, get grounded in the body. We process emotion. We gain mental clarity, but we also tune into energy. And when energy is tuned into after all of those stages, what starts to happen is we also tune into our guides, our spirits, our guiding force, our intuition. And in this intuition place, one of my clients, she was tuned into her ancestors. And what her ancestors told her was, it's your time. We didn't have the life and opportunity to do what you're doing, to help other people with, her coaching is based on the 7 Hermetic principles. And so they allowed her or gave her the message to go forth. But here's the thing, even when we have these soul touching epiphanies, our ego and our soul are always going to be present. And what's really important to understand, and what I want to kind of help you, is to discern between the two voices. And the thing about the ego, a lot of us understand it as that kind of whisper in our ear that sort of like, you're not enough. It has some kind of story that tells you you're not enough, you're not capable, you're not worthy. This is not something significant to be talking about, in your services. You don't belong, and this is not, at its perfection. So, go do something to make it more presentable, make it more perfect. And so the thing about that is, if you're a healer and you're a coach, you start to hear your own patterns, right? Because that's what we do as healers and coaches. We start to observe ourselves, right? And that's a real obvious observation. But as you know, if you've been in this work for long enough, like me and a lot of my clients, decades and decades and decades, there are many layers, right? And we get to really know the kind of more obvious layers, the one that has this voice that is not necessarily nice to us. But there is also a voice. Let's talk about the layers. So the first layer is this layer where the ego doesn't even allow itself to move into a situation because it's just not safe. So, for example, if you are a person who maybe dreams of, moving to South America, but the ego, anytime you think about it, it's almost like, let's not even go there because it's not even a possibility. The other layer is you think it, and it will, so it's almost like, the first layer is more like you just see your life as it is. So you see your life, and let's say, for example, you live in this city, and it's just like, it doesn't even perceive other potential realities. It's just like, well, this is it. This is what it is. There's no other, this is what we call that ego structure, that ego identity. There's no other version of me that exists other than this. So it sort of doesn't even look outside of the realm of possibility. And again, it's unconscious. It's not something we do on purpose. It's not something we do because we're bad people. It's just the way the ego works, right? If I said, well, let's all move to Mars tomorrow, most of the planet would be like, yeah, I like planet Earth. I'm good here. And then maybe like, 0.0005% of the population might be like, oh, cool. Yeah, sign me up. Right. Because their ego structure is like able to, oh yeah, okay, this is a possibility. Right. So there's no right, there's no wrong. I'm not telling you what to do, but this is just that. Right. And then there is that part of you that thinks it, but then in your mind, you battle with it. And it's like this back and forth of why I'm not enough, why I'm not good enough, all of these reasons. So you have this kind of looping thing in your mind. And here's how it starts to emerge. And now all of a sudden, maybe the ego feels safe enough to kind of admit or like its vulnerabilities and also what it wants. Okay, so it starts to kind of like understand, because the thing that I want to mention is that the ego and the soul both need a safe place to express itself. So I'm not here to tell you, you must, what do you call it? Break the ego and it's your enemy and you should never like let it have its space. We're humans and humans have egos. And so we have to learn how to collaborate with them. And most importantly, discern when it's at play. And so here's the thing. As you go towards what you want, there's that voice. So there's another layer where the voice just diminishes. Like, so you'll say something like, oh yeah, I think it would be a great idea if I implemented this thing in my business, which you've never done before. And then immediately you start to think of all the reasons why it's not possible. And so let's say you are okay, and now I'm safe enough and I'm going to just say out loud what I want. And you say it to somebody else, and then you do the same thing that you were doing in your mind, but out loud. You tell somebody, and then they might be like, oh yeah, that's really great. Oh my God, good idea. And then then the ego part of you starts to like, you know what, actually, and you start to think of all the reasons why you can't do it. And here is the layer that I think stumps most entrepreneurs. Because entrepreneurship is a process of creation. It's a process of creating something new, right? Based on old fundamental business principles. So what sometimes happens, and it happens all the time in our coaching calls, is that we start to get clear, and we have safety for both the ego and both the soul. So the ego will have all of its reasons and all its whys, and all of it, what I call core wounding starts to come up, and then we start working with that through the body, through the mind, through processing emotion, through starting to alchemize that energy and put it into action, that freed up energy. And we have to understand that we oscillate between survival, or the ego's voice, and the soul's voice. We oscillate all the time. And sometimes the two are happening all the time, and they're happening so close together that we don't realize that they're actually two different parts of us. So very often what will happen is that there's a safety container for the ego, a safety container for the soul. And all of a sudden we get into what I call a flow state, where we're like, okay, this is what I want. This is my dreamiest client. This is the program that, like all of my synergy of my work, I would love to offer it in this way with this expertise. And, it's like, I have a client where it's like his expertise is, it's a combination of different modalities. And actually, all of our clients have a combination of different modalities, right? So myself, I have a combination of yoga, I have a combination of energy work, I have a combination of somatic work, I have body work, dance, all that. And then what happens is you start to dream up, or you start to vision, because that's what vision is, it's like a dream, how you can offer this in your unique synergy. And so that's the uniqueness and the creativity of the soul. It's like it's something that sounds like everybody else, but it's not, because even though I teach yoga and meditation and energy work and body work and dance work, it may be similar, but the way it comes through my body, through my mind, through my energy, through my soul is going to be unique. And that is your differentiator. And so sometimes we think about like, what's our special differentiator? Well, guess what? It's being you. And so in our calls, what starts to happen is this part of us that is really excited, that is unique to us, that starts to spew out the wisdom and how we want to see this in the world comes out, right? And it's like in this flow state, like I start to envision myself as speaking to these people. And, for me, it's like my big vision is to start to teach people business more through the body, right? And that's what I've been doing, but I'm going to do it more, let's say, I'm going to allow you guys to see that more in my work, where it's like, let's work with the body first and then work on our business. And so that's my vision, because I know that's how sensitives, that's how empaths, that's how healers, they work. It's like we are vibing at such a frequency that our nervous system has to constantly move that energy and adjust that energy. So what starts to happen is that all of that comes out and it sounds so amazing. And we're like, we feel like we're on a high. And then we get into maybe the mundane, or our nervous system starts to feel like it's overwhelmed and it's tired, it's overstimulated, a lot of information. We start thinking about how we're going to implement what we're doing. And then that's where sort of like the recalibration happens, where if we're not observant of the voice that will also come in that says, oh yeah, I don't think that's a good idea, which is the voice of reason. And here's the thing that I want to talk about is like the voice of reason. It sounds so smart and intellectual, right? So it's like I had a client who again, was on this flow. And then as soon as the flow stopped, the survival need came in, and I was like, well, how am I going to do that? And you spiral down the how vortex, which I'm not saying you're not supposed to figure out how, but you spiral down in a vortex of how to reason yourself out of what you need to do. You start to reason why the how is difficult, why it's hard, why people wouldn't want to buy what you buy, what you're offering, why, maybe the concept doesn't make sense. So this voice of reason, it sounds so smart. And this is the voice of your ego. And I think a lot of people in this moment, that voice of ego can sound so seductive. It can sound so like, oh yeah, that's smart. Oh yeah, right? And here's how I want you to discern. When there is a voice, because basically it's saying stop right there. You're conjuring up a new vision of your life, and we don't know that vision. So let's start to really go through all of check the boxes to make sure that we're safe. Okay. And I'm not saying that's not valid, but here's when it's stopping you. It's when it is reasoning you out of something that your soul just expressed. That, remember what I talked about, that free flow, that part of you that is like, oh my God, I would just love it if, I did this with my life. I would love it if I, moved to this country. I would love it if I kind of had this schedule and this income and work with these people. Oh yeah, but who? And it's looking for something like, I've never done that before. I've never seen that before. So the ego will be like, oh yeah, well that doesn't make, and it will find reasons. It will find reasons. It will reason you out of what you just proclaimed, your truth that you just proclaimed. Okay? So let me know in the comments if this makes sense. If ever, you had this like big audacious goal and then you talked yourself out of it, like literally in the same breath that you spoke your truth. Okay? And here's the thing, we oscillate. That's why our program understands that we oscillate between the two, and we're constantly shifting our body, our mind, and our energy to the newer frequency of the soul. So how do we stay in the soul's presence? Well, and I asked this question, it's a way of tuning into your highest stream of consciousness. And here's the difference. In the highest stream of consciousness, answers come to you. when we're in soul, and when we're in survival, when we're in ego, we are looking for the answers, and we're kind of looking for it in a memory that doesn't exist, because it's what we're creating is new, it's different. It's in a memory that doesn't exist. So the ego gets like, yeah, but that doesn't exist, so it can't be possible. And it also, it's looking, then it starts to look for something outside of us, right? So we may start to compare ourselves with somebody who maybe is doing something similar to us. And then we start, the ego will start comparing and seeing, okay, well, my version here, my current status is not, doesn't look like that person, right? It's not as confident as that person. It's not, doesn't have it as, like, oh, they have, the ego will say like, well, yeah, it's easier for them because they're more confident. They have more money. They have more, and I'm not saying that doesn't make life easier, okay? But we all know those beautiful stories of people who've changed the world with not a single dollar, yeah? With their own vision and their highest stream of consciousness and their commitment to that. Because here's the thing. When we go into our highest stream of consciousness, it feels good. And it's like we feel like this high vibe frequency, and it's something that helps us sustain. But it doesn't mean when we start to implement in the 3D world that it's not going to be work. It's not going to be like our brain, for many of our clients, when I start to tune into like and ask them the questions about their program, you have to start to think about your own processes. And it's not that they're not there. It's just that you maybe have not self-studied yourself to understand that you have so many processes. I have a client who is a travel coach, and he's traveled 46 countries, and his ego part will just kind of be like at not enough, and looking at some other travel coach who's done it before, and then all of a sudden it kind of like diminishes what he's doing, and then all of a sudden, oh yeah, okay, maybe I'm not supposed to be doing this, without actually looking at what I call data, real life experience of that time where he sailed across the Pacific Atlantic Ocean from BC to New Zealand, that time where he got stuck in Panama, that time where he he was in an Aboriginal indigenous culture, that time where, it's like, and how did he sustain his life? How did he, work? How did he get his visa? Like, these are all experiences that are unique to you. You have unique experiences, and drawing out those experiences and drawing out, okay, well, how did I do that? And what was the processes that allowed me to get into the body, into the mindset, into action to where I want to go. So the outcome of your life, this is what I want to say, the outcome of your life currently, and this is where the ego kind of doesn't see this, is the gift that you have to offer. If you're a coach, if you're a healer, you know that you've brought yourself and others through something that they were struggling, something that's very painful, into a place where they now are able to work with their deepest pains and move into their deepest desires. You know that. So now it's like the processes is to start to self-study your own work. And sometimes it's like, it's sort of almost like we have a written book of our life, and then we forget to read chapter 1, 2, 3, and we're already at chapter 30, and we're looking outside of ourselves, or we're looking in a memory of something that is new, without realizing I created many new experiences in my past that didn't exist. So we want to start to look at, like, what are those experiences that I moved through that were completely outside of my comfort zone, outside of even knowing how, but I kind of went with my intuition. I kind of went with my soul. I went with that place where I just knew I needed to move into that potential reality that eventually became reality. Do you see what I'm trying to say? So your highest stream of consciousness is always coming to you. So the processes I bring people through is we ground in the body so that the nervous system, and you can take action, because the thing is, when you're a highly sensitive person, if your body is overwhelmed, you can barely get up, because the frequency is so high in you sometimes. And so the oscillation between ego and soul can be very like up and down, because you're able to feel. Okay, so my job is not to help you not feel something, it's to help you feel more of what you feel and come into a place where your body is grounded in that. Come into a place where you can process the emotions that start to release as we start to move towards what we want, because we all know we're going to face feelings that we don't want to feel. When we we're going for what we want, right? All of our feelings of rejection, all of our feelings of doubt, all of our feelings of not good enough are going to be like this. And that the beauty of that is that it's this opportunity now for you to see them for what they are. And they're really just part of you that's just trying to protect an existing status quo. And if we start to look at, we've changed our existing status quo so many times, right? I want you to think about right now in your life, the scary thing that you did that you like at the time was like, oh my God, I don't know if I can move to that country. I don't know if I could take that course. I don't know if I could teach this workshop. And all of a sudden you were doing it, right? Because you started to listen to that higher stream of consciousness that just came to you. You weren't comparing yourself to somebody else. Like one of my friends, she's like, my daughter knows exactly what she wants, you know? She wants to like practice aerial gymnastics, and she wants, there was another thing that she wanted to do, which was very specific. And it's like, that's her soul speaking, right? Because it's not what any of her friends are doing, right? And maybe she got inspired by another soul, but there was something inside of her that was like, ooh, I would do that. I want to do that. That's exciting. So the other thing about the soul is that it gets excited. The frequency starts to shift and change when you tune into your higher frequency, your higher soul. And then you're able to hear. So here's the thing. In our program, if you were to work with me, the first thing we do is we start to heal those core wounds. But guess what starts to happen? When you heal those core wounds, there is available energy now freed up. And this available energy is in this higher frequency that helps you listen to your guidance, listen to your intuition. And here's probably the most challenging thing. We have free will. So it is up to you to take your own medicine, do the practices, and move towards what you want to do. But here's the thing about sensitives, empaths, and healers. We kind of have to do it bit by bit. So I teach people nothing new. I teach them marketing, concepts. I teach them how to message. I teach them how to do sales, how to change your relationship to money. These are not new principles. They're timeless principles, but I do it in a way that their nervous system and their energy body can handle. So if you were to work with me, because it's a high ticket premium process where I'm going to customize the journey for you, the journey is the same outline for everyone. But your personal journey, you're going to move towards what you want. Remember, I said the ego will always protect you. And that moment when the ego is trying to protect you, that's when we're going to do the work in the body, in the mind, and in energy. And then once it's freed up, we are very closely going to take that freed up energy and just put it into the next most profitable action, the next most obvious action in your energy body, so that your energy body This bank account is full, but also in your actual bank account. What is the closest step to cash flow? Now, don't get me wrong. This is not only about money. It's about when we utilize the downloads of our own soul, we're going to practice staying centered in that knowing. So when you clear your mind and when you tune into a higher vibration, you get reminded and you start to hear, who am I? And why am I here? And when you start to center in that place, all your actions moving forward are coming more from this energetic movement towards that potential reality. And it's very different from, I'm going to touch something dirty here. It's very different from that place, and this is how you're going to discern that your ego will. It's very different from a place of I have to. You're doing it from guilt. You're doing it from shame. You're doing it from a comparison model that somebody else is doing it that way, so you need to do it. Something outside of yourself. The soul's consciousness will do it just like I don't have evidence, but I know. But here's the thing. Life will continue to give you evidence as you move towards what you want. So when you listen to that higher stream of consciousness, if you stay there long enough and you're in that place of observation, and you're in that place of grace and gratitude and willingness to receive, you're going to be like, oh, wow. Okay, I just put a little bit more intentionality towards where I want to go versus where I don't want to go. And, there was a little bit of a momentum. And it's funny because I was just on a call with one of my clients and we just did this very simple chart. Because it was slow in her business. And here's the thing. This first 2023, it's slow for everyone. We're in a contracting market. And there's a surge of income and money 2 years ago. And now everyone is sort of like needing to pay back their loans and their interest. So we're in that place where things are quiet. It's like a downturn in the market. But that also means that we need to get a little bit more intentional and lean in, because this is part of business, right? There is going to be the winter, there's going to be spring, there's going to be summer. And as entrepreneurs, we want to develop that maturity and that willingness to stay centered in who we are and why we're here. And also understanding, here's the thing that I realize for anybody going for something that is not in their current status quo, there needs to be some kind of safe container for your ego and for your soul. There needs to be a way of working in the body. There needs to be a way of processing emotion. There needs to be a way of clearing your mind. There needs to be a way of energetically alchemizing all of the SHIT and moving it to the next most profitable action. And when we're in that container, that's your safety place for your soul to dream and to implement and to go for what you want. And if you're jumping into an unknown, you're also going to be triggering other people's egos, right? If all of a sudden you decide you want to move halfway across the world, some people will be like, yeah, go for it, this is amazing. And some people are like, oh, are you sure? The voice of reason is going to come online. So it's super important to have a container and a process, a safe place for your soul to dream and to implement so it can have an accountability. So if you were to work with me, I keep your soul accountable. We work with the ego, but we're not going to always go back into the past and bring it into the present. We're just going to deal with it as it arises, as kind of when the ego is at its highest resistance, again, when it's like you're getting closer and closer to, your big audacious dream, which continues to evolve. So that means it's always going to show up. There's no such thing as your ego never showing up or never not interacting with your life. So that safe container, there needs to be a safe container for your dreams to be spoken and for you to be accountable to them. Because it's, of course, when we're on our own, we're most likely going to think the thing and then go back into the comfort zone, unless we're doing a lot of deep work and we're really observing ourselves and we've acclimatized. But I've never known anybody, including my mentors who are, super successful in their life and their business, that didn't have a safe container for their soul speak. Okay. And trust me, I've tried it because my ego's like, you can do this, you know what you're doing, and so that's the kind of instead of the diminishing, it's sort of the elevating, and yes, it's true. And at the same time, frequency feels frequency, vibration feels vibration. And if you're in this higher vibration and you don't have other people to support you in that higher vibration and to reflect it back and to literally transmit it back to you, it's hard to stay there. It's kind of like if you imagine you're in a really good mood and then you get into a room of 10 people and they're all in a bad mood. Yes, you can stay in a good mood and it's possible, but to do that for a long period of time, especially when you're building something like a business, which is a lifetime, in my experience, that container is needed, right? So find your container, whether it's here, whether it's with somebody that is doing things living life the way you want to live, and is able to hold space for you and also give you strategic responses to where you are in the moment. And that's the thing about having, a coaching program that is not just a general program, but in our program, there is just a high level of customization, because some people might be at, stage number 2, and another person might be stage number 7. And I can't give stage number 2 the same advice as I give stage number 7. If that makes sense, in their spiritual practice and in their business. Yeah. And also this practice that we practice with energetics, we practice with the body, we practice with the clearing the mind, we practice with emotion, is also not for all entrepreneurs. My husband is very much more logical, and his emotions are not, they don't necessarily stunt him when he goes and asks for more money or goes to a networking event, or they're there, but his nervous system is able to kind of quickly acclimatize, and his logical brain kind of takes over, and he's able to sort of just implement like that. So it's not this process that I'm offering you guys where you're in a safe container. Your body's in a safe container to allow all the core wounds to be emerged in the body. Your mind, your egoic mind, and your soul's downloads are in a safe place. Your emotions that are human, right, that sometimes are not necessarily clear, but they're human, are in a safe place, and we move them towards clarity, because our emotions and what we are experiencing on the outside world is a projection of what's happening on the inside. So, I tell my clients all the time, you'll see when you start offering what you want, all the objections that your clients are going to experience is all of your own insecurities. So if somebody's like, whoa, that's so expensive. Well, who charges that much? That's not their experience, it's your internal experience. That's a projection. And energetically, we're oscillating between kind of the nervous system that's overwhelmed and the nervous system that's on a high frequency. And that oscillation is important so that we're not like down and then up and then down. And that's, I think, the biggest thing that happens in our community is that we have this high, but we don't necessarily know how to take that frequency and that energetic vibration and move it into action towards our business. We almost kind of separate the two for some reason. Right? And that's the biggest thing I see. And that's why I want to give you a container that brings those aspects of ourselves really close together and implement very close to when we freed up the energy. Because if we wait too long, or we don't have a kind of processes to hold the oscillation, we're going to go right back into our status quo, right? The protecting mechanism. Okay, so let me know in the comments if this makes sense. So let's review. We know that there's your egoic structure and your soul are always going to be present. There's no, that's just not, so we may as well accept that now. And trust me, as you go closer and closer, the layer of your ego becomes very thin, and the veil of that almost is undetected because your memory thinks, oh yeah, I worked with that in that more obvious way, but in the subtle ways that it kind of puts the veil is different. Like, so for me, an obvious veil, okay, I want to just share this because I hopefully this will help. An obvious veil for me is, I've always had sort of different, a particular relationship with men. And that my veil, my egoic veil is like all men are manipulative. And I saw that. I worked with it. Worked with it. You guys know, right? We've worked with it for years, right? But just recently, after decades and decades and decades of working with this, that veil was still subtly there. So of course, the closest person in my life, who's my partner, right, my husband, whenever I'd feel a sense of manipulation, I'd kind of broad brush him into that category of you're a manipulative person. Do you see? And it was so subtle that I didn't even realize I was doing that. So here's the thing. We can continue to look at our patterns over and over and over again. But it's really important also to see the fruition of working with our pattern for so long that sometimes we don't even realize we're not there anymore. And sometimes we get in, I call this a healing loop. We get so used to knowing the pattern that we think that pattern is still there when it's actually not there anymore. So I finally let go of that thinnest veil. And what started to happen is I was able to kind of receive him in his totality, in his ego structures and in his soul. Because here's the thing, everyone's going to have egoic structures and soul. And it's all like this interesting mirror of projection that we're constantly like projecting onto each other. But if we can have room for both, here's the thing, when we can have room for both, for other people's soul, because if we only look at egoic structures, we're just going to think the world is this kind of place where it's in this contracted, diminished point of view. And that's not all it is, right? There are so many people and humans that are constantly living from their soul's highest stream of consciousness, right? You see that in artists, in dancers, in poets, in even people who are scientists, or like they're just playing in their zone of genius. So the two are always in play. And as the more we do our work, the subtler that voice becomes, and sometimes when we are looking back at our kind of healing work, we kind of look into the memory of it versus the actual present day experience. Okay, and that requires mental clarity. Get grounded in the body to help the nervous system clear the mind, process the emotions that come up, the feelings that you don't want to feel, and master your energy. That's the first half of the program. And then we along the way, we get into strategy, knowing your dreamiest clients, knowing how to talk to them, knowing how to build a program based on your highest stream of consciousness, and knowing how to price it so that the cash flow and the revenue are something that is sustainable for you and your business growth and your scalability. So there's that. Understanding the voice of reason. We talked about that. How the voice of reason sometimes can sound so smart and intellectual, but it's actually the voice of your ego. We talked about the discernment between your ego and your soul. The ego, and the ego, when we know it's like stop because the car's coming and it might hit you, okay, we listen. But when it's like stop, especially after you've just proclaimed what you truly want, then you kind of know it's the voice of your ego. Here's another thing. There's also the voice of your soul, and sometimes the voice of your soul is quiet because you need to move through the egoic structure first. So the voice of your soul doesn't necessarily always give you answers in the way that you like. Sometimes the voice of your soul is quiet because it's like, well, you just simply have to move through this experience. Yeah? Move through this human experience. So don't misdiagnose how the soul operates. Yes, it's in a high vibe frequency, but implementing that in the 3D is still challenging. It's still, the ego structure is still going to be there. Your nervous system still acclimatizing to it, right? There's still going to be these parts of fear and these parts that you're feeling feelings that you don't necessarily want to feel. But here's the thing, when we continue to listen and we continue to do the work spiritually and we continue to just implement the next most profitable action, next most obvious action, then we start to build a business based on how we function as empathic people, as healers, as coaches, as sensitives. And so that's it. Like, what else did we talk about? We talked about a lot, but the highest stream of consciousness is going to come to you versus the egoic structure that is looking in a memory that doesn't exist or something outside of you. You compare yourself. So it's important to learn how to self-study your own zone of genius, because that's the ego. That's soul, right? That's the soul speak. Your zone of genius is when your soul is like soaring and loving the experience of moving through that potential. And the soul is here to experience both egoic structure and soul spirit experience. So if you are interested in learning how to collaborate with both as you evolve, because you are a creative being and you're interested in transformation, evolution, even if you sometimes don't want to, the work that we're doing, the healing work is not always fun or easy. But there is something inside of you. There is something that you know deep inside who you are and why you're here. And you want a safe container for your ego and for your soul. And you want, the fundamentals of how to kind of move the ideas that you have in your head or what you're already doing into something that is a little bit, that is aligned with your truth, but is also profitable, right? And you want a safe container for your ego and for your soul and next most obvious action, so you can move forward, you can grow financially, you can grow emotionally, and you can start to see that momentum. Then let me know. Jamie, I'm ready for a breakthrough yoga coaching call. And on that call, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you an application form to let you, you're going to answer questions, and we're going to look at those questions to see sort of the egoic structure, the things that are kind of unconsciously holding you back. And on the call, we're going to look at where in your body, mind, and energy has there been an imprint of that holds you back, right? Because that's where it is. It's in the body, it's in the mind, it's in the energy. And then we're going to move forward to where you want to go, right? So where do you want to go? You know, this is the thing. And the thing about it is you've always known. And now is the time, really now is the time for us light workers, us healers, us coaches to give our work, the thing that we've been working with for a long time, right, in our own life. It's time to give that out to the world, because if we hold it all in, that frequency kind of implodes on us, and we sort of get into the spiral of like thinking that we have to heal again. But when you share your work in a way that's sustainable for yourself on a just very practical level, and for your soul, then there's a freed up, liberated energy that creates momentum and creates an expansion and lets you continue to play in your highest potential, in your soul's frequency. So that's it. DM me, let me know you're ready for a breakthrough yoga coaching call. Or this, after this, Katie's going to put in the comments my calendar link. And otherwise, I'm going to see you 10 a.m. I've shifted it, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Thursday, 10 a.m. I'll see you next week. Bye, guys.